Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I present the Gambling Harm Reduction Protecting Gamblers and Other Measures Bill 2014 and the explanatory memorandum.
Clark? It's coming. It's a long walk.
First reading, a bill for an act to provide a regulatory framework for poker machines that will reduce the harm to problem gamblers and for related purposes.
I call the honourable member for Denison.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I move that this bill be now read a second time. Madam Speaker, this bill would see that mandatory pre-commitment is implemented for all poker machines in Australia, that $1 maximum bets would be introduced, that a withdrawal limit of $250 be imposed on all automatic teller machines and FPOS devices in poker machine venues, that jackpots be restricted on poker machines throughout the country to $500, that the maximum banknote that can be inserted into any poker machine at any one time would be a $20 limit, and that the maximum credit that any poker machine could accrue would be a maximum of $20. Madam Speaker, the timeline for these reforms would be that all machines sold must be capable of complying with all of the above by the 31st of December 2015, that all machines sold must actually comply with all of the above criteria by 31st December 2019. Moreover, Deputy Speaker, venues with 5 or more poker machines must be compliant by 31 December 2019, but there is consideration for smaller venues and the limited resources that they have, so that venues with 5 or fewer poker machines would need to be compliant by 31st of December 2021, an extra 2 years. Deputy Speaker, my private member's bill is entirely consistent with the work of the Productivity Commission and, importantly, consistent with the recommendations of the Productivity Commission in 2010, when it brought out this very hefty report. In fact, its second substantial report into poker machines and problem gambling in Australia. Regrettably, this report was released in 2010, the day that Julia Gillard became Prime Minister at the expense of Kevin Rudd, and those dramatic political events that day greatly overshadowed what is and what remains Australia's benchmark inquiry and benchmark blueprint for gambling reform, the best we've ever seen. So it is a shame that in 2010 that very good work by the Productivity Commission was overshadowed in the way it did. It does remain the blueprint and the best guidance for the way ahead to deal with problem gambling, in particular from poker machines. Now, Deputy Speaker, obviously poker machine reform was a big issue in the 43rd Parliament, and some of the spotlight has gone off it in this Parliament. But mark my words, Deputy Speaker, poker machine problem gambling remains just as serious a problem in the Australian community as it ever has, and there is just as much pressure in the community for reform, just as much expectation that people like ourselves in this place and in the other place will finally do something to diminish problem gambling in this country. I mean, the fact is that something approaching 100,000 Australians are poker machine problem gamblers, and they are losing in the order of $5,000 million a year. In fact, the Productivity Commission found that something like 600,000 Australians are playing the poker machines every week on a weekly basis, and something like 15% of those people are poker machine problem gamblers, and another 15% are at risk of becoming poker machine problem gamblers. So, in other words, more than 500,000 Australians play the pokies every week, and almost a third of them are poker machine problem gamblers or at risk of becoming a problem gambling. So why on earth, Deputy Speaker, why on earth is it so hard to get reform in this place? Truly, it beggars belief that when we have a problem as serious as this, that there is complete and utter disregard in this place for the cost to the community. You know, that approximately 100,000 poker machine problem gamblers, yes, it's a big figure, but it's not just a figure. Every one of those near on 100,000 Australians is a human being with a very human story. They're all losing more money than they can afford. But as a direct result of that, some of them are losing their relationships. They're losing their relationship with their family. Some of them are losing their job. Some of them are losing their house. Some of these people are workers in a workplace who are pinching out of the till so that their employer is in financial difficulty because of these thefts. And in fact, at its worst, some of these people are taking their own lives. They're taking their own lives because they can live no longer with the costs to them of poker machine problem gambling. And what has this place done about it so far, Deputy Speaker? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. The only reason, Deputy Speaker, we had the prospect of some reform in the previous parliament was because the then Prime Minister, the then government, were forced through the difficulties of a power-sharing parliament, or the challenges of a power-sharing parliament, was forced to sign a deal for meaningful poker machine reform. And what did the previous government do the first opportunity it got? As soon as it could move Peter Slipper into the Speaker's chair, as soon as it had the numbers, it ditched those reforms. And that will be forever a shameful black mark against the Labor Party and the people concerned in the 43rd Parliament. But I tell you what, no one's covered in any glory in this place, Deputy Speaker, because as soon as there was a change of government and the Liberal National Coalition came to power, what did they do? They overturned the modest reforms that we did get in the previous parliament, the very modest reforms that the Labor Party was forced to implement, if only because of the public pressure that had been built up over that period of time. And what did the new government do? It overturned those reforms. And how did the new government get that overturning through the Senate? With the support of the Labor Party. Now, I'm going through the history, Deputy Speaker, because the Australian community needs to understand, needs to be reminded, that the Australian Parliament and the major parties have consistently let the community down when it comes to meaningful poker machine reform. So after all of the carry-on of the 43rd Parliament and the repealing of the reforms in this parliament, what are we left with? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. No action by the Australian Parliament to clamp down on a dangerous product that is adversely affecting about 100,000 people. And by the way, the research shows that for every one of those 100,000 people who are a poker machine problem gambler, between 5 and 10 other people are affected. Their mums, their dads, their brothers, their sisters, their sons, their daughters, their friends, their work colleagues, their work employers. They're all adversely affected. In other words, there could be 1 million people adversely affected in this country by poker machine problem gambling. And what has this parliament done? Nothing. And that is to the enduring shame of this place and the people that have populated this place during the 43rd and the 44th Parliament. I'm pleased to say that my colleague, the member for Melbourne, is here to second this bill, and I applaud the Greens for being the only other party that has covered itself in any glory when it's come to pushing for the need for poker machine reform. So I thank the member for Melbourne. Now, the industry thinks they've won this fight. Well, mark my word, Deputy Speaker, the industry has not won this fight. Yes, it's paid off the Liberal Party. Yes, it's paid off the Nationals. Yes, it's paid off Labor. They're all on the take. They all take generous donations from the poker machine industry. In fact, the Labor Party even operates poker machine venues in the ACT. They're all on the take. Why, at the time the parliament was considering these matters in the 43rd Parliament, Packer gave Katter's party hundreds of thousands of dollars, and no one batted an eyelid, thought, what's unusual about that? The fact is, we have a cruel, dishonest industry trading on the misery of Australians. Just about all of the parties are in cahoots with the industry and on the take, and that's how we find ourselves in these circumstances. Well, Deputy Speaker, mark my words again. Reform is coming, because there has never been a wrong like this in the community that has been allowed to go on forever. Because sooner or later, a government with a bit of backbone, with a bit of integrity will come along and it will drive reform. And it will be the community that will make that happen. Because the community will keep insisting that this place do something, finally do something, to help those people, to stop people taking their lives. Change will come. It will come eventually. It's just a matter of when. And I encourage the community to keep up the good fight. In closing, Deputy Speaker, I commend my bill to the House, and I'd like to thank a member of my staff, Alex Moores, who's done a really good job on crafting what I think will be an exemplar for poker machine reform in the future. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.